Hey guys, how's it going? I'm back here with another video, and today I decided to bring this complete tutorial where I'm going to be showing to you guys how to build a personal finance tracker with authentication, database integration, and using all of the common standards that are currently used in the industry. So this is going to be a complete project. I'm going to show you guys from scratch how to build everything. And my hopes with this tutorial is that by the end, you'll be able to build any scalable React application and understands the common best practices that you have to follow. The reason why I'm making this is because I read a lot of you guys' comments, and a lot of you guys have mentioned that this kind of videos that I make where I build a project and I go really in depth on what I'm working on really helps, because despite it being a little bit longer than other videos, you guys get out of it actually knowing how to build the project yourself from scratch. So my hopes with this is to combine my style of teaching where I leave out things that I think are truly unnecessary, whilst at the same time going really deep on the things I feel like you guys need some extra help. So before we get into the video, if you want to check out all of the code, it will be with the GitHub repository in the description. If you're the kind of person who just wants to check out the code, you can go ahead and do that as well. And before we get into the video, if you could leave a like and subscribe, I would massively appreciate it, because you guys know that it will help push my videos to more people. It's like the easiest way to support me, even if you don't have money, if you don't have anything. That's the main way to support me. I really appreciate you guys, and let's get into the video. Okay everyone, so before we get into the video, I want to give a little bit of a demo of what we're going to be building. So over here you can see we have a website, and keep in mind that if you don't think the UI looks good, it's because that's not the main point of the video. I'm going to give you guys a CSS throughout the video. However, the point of the video is all the functionality, and I think this app definitely makes up for the UI with its functionality. So you can see it's a very simple personal finance tracker, but you're able to do a lot with it. First of all, you can sign up to a new account if you're interested in. I already have an account, so I'm going to click over here, and there's multiple options of what you can actually use. We're going to be using Clerk to power this authentication system, which is going to make it a lot easier. You can see we can sign in with Google, Facebook, GitHub, or Twitch, or our own email address. I'm going to choose Google. Now that we've logged in, we're redirected to this page where it shows our name over here. We have a beautiful navbar with our user account in case we want to sign out. And we have a list of all of our expenses. I'm going to add all of those in the video. But if you want to add a new expense or a new income, I could just come over here, just add, for example, a computer that I want to buy. The amount will be negative $3,000 because it's an expense. It's probably going to be entertainment, I don't know. And I bought it with a credit card. I can click on add record, and now our total monthly budget has decreased because it's now negative because we spent a lot of money, and our thing appears over here. Obviously, this is all powered by our database, so if I refresh this, it will query the data again, and the data will still be here. I can also manually edit all of the fields over here. I can change this to haircut done by my mom, I don't know. And then this will obviously be saved in the database as well. I can change the amount. Maybe this wasn't $50, maybe this was $60, and it will work as well. Not only that, but I can also delete all of the entries I want, and everything will be registered automatically. So this is basically what we're going to be building. I'm really excited to show this project for you guys. And yeah, that's basically it. Let's get into the video. Okay, everyone. So as you can see, I opened up here in VS Code the project folder that we're going to be working on. And to start things off, I want to separate this into two different folders, the client and the server. So I always do this whenever I'm working on a full stack app, because it's just easier to separate both of them, and it makes everything way easier. So in the client is where we're going to hold all of project files related to our frontend. And in the server, we're going to hold our NodeJS Express backend. So to start things off, I'm going to be using Yarn to create our app, and we're going to be using Vite instead of Create React App. It's really not going to be that different. So if you're interested in using Vite, Create React App, or even Next.js, I think this tutorial is still very valid for you. So I'm going to run yarn create Vite, just like this, and then press enter. It's going to obviously ask us a bunch of stuff. I'm going to put a dot as the project name because I want to just create everything inside of the client. Then it's going to ask us for our library. I'm going to use React. Then it's going to ask us what we want. I want just normal TypeScript. I don't want to use SWC. And then we need to run yarn to install all the Vite packages. And now that we ran yarn, let's run yarn dev. This will actually run our app on this localhost. I already have the browser over here, and you can see they have a very basic app when you create a Vite application, but we're obviously gonna override that. So in our client folder now we have a bunch of files, which is pretty good. Our whole app will be inside of this main.tsx and this app.tsx. Now, for user management and user authentication, we're gonna be using a great service called Clerk. I'm going to open up the website over here. I like Clerk because it is definitely one of the best platforms out there for user management. I think they really did a great job with making the documentation really easy to understand. And also the product in itself is really easy to use. You can make something that is usually very complicated to do, which is user management and authentication, and do it really quickly and easily in React, for example. Also, if you guys are interested in this isn't it isn't a paid, like you can pay for it, but there's also a free plan. It is the one that we're going to be using. And to be honest, up to 10,000 monthly active users, you can use that without worrying unless you have a bigger project. I would also recommend getting the pro plan if you're actually interested in improving the capabilities of Clerk. But just full disclaimer, Clerk is actually sponsoring this video, but it is a platform that I've used and I really enjoy using. And I'm going to show you guys how to actually implement it in your product very easily by using their built-in React components. So the first part of this tutorial will be, we'll have to create a Clerk account. Again, creating the account is free. I'm going to sign out just to show you guys how to create one. You click sign in. You log in with any way you want. I'm going to log in with my own details. And when you're signed in, as you can see, I created a new account to sign in with this for this video. You'll have access to this dashboard account. I already have an app running because I created this app just for this video beforehand on this new account. I'll actually delete this app, and I'm going to show you guys how to start a new app with them. So you should probably see something like this when you log into your account. This is the Clerk dashboard, and we want to create a new application. You can see this is kind of the UI we are expecting for our actual project, which is pretty nice, right? It's going to demonstrate you can actually sign in with Google, with your normal email, phone number, username, GitHub, Apple, everything you might expect. They have an option for it. And I think that's great because like it doesn't, to add this thing yourself, like to add a Apple authentication, to add a password and email authentication, adds a new layer of complexity to a project, and just using this will make it way simpler. So in my opinion, I'm gonna have two different possibilities. I wanna have sign in with Google, I wanna have with GitHub, and I wanna have with Facebook, the three of them like this. I also probably want, oh yeah, Twitch, because I work for Twitch. You guys can sign in with that as well. And yeah, let's just keep it like that. Then you need to give it an application name. I'm gonna call it PedroTech Finance, like this, right? And this would be kind of the UI you would see with something like this. Then I'm gonna click on Create Application, and as you can see, we have created our application. They have a little simple instruction or manual over here. So we're going to choose React and we're just going to follow it. Like I said, it's really simple. I don't even need to click on the React guide because I already know how to do it. And I'm just going to show it to you guys. But basically, we're going to come up here on the top and we're going to first delete everything that is on the app right now. So I'm going to delete all the things that come with the normal Vite boilerplate app because we're obviously not going to be working with that. And on our main.tsx, this over here, we're going to add some Clerk stuff. But to add them, we need to install it. So I'm going to open up a new terminal in our application. I'm going to cd again to the client. Make sure you're in the client. And then I'm going to run yarn add at clerk/clerk react, just like this. And then I'm going to press enter. We're going to install the Clerk React package. And while that's happening, let's actually already start writing the code. So the way Clerk will work is we just have to connect our actual code, our manually written application to the application we created over here. We do that through the publishable key that we have here from Clerk. So I want to make this into a env, an environment, a variable. The reason for that is because when we publish this to GitHub, I don't want you guys to have access to my environment variable. Obviously, you guys are seeing it right now. However, I would recommend you guys to not show it to other people. You want to hide this. Right after I publish this video, I'm going to delete this application, so this won't even matter. However, you guys definitely want to protect yourselves. So what I want to do is I want to create a env file in our application. So I'm going to come over here inside of our client, and I'm going to create a file called .env.local, just like this. And on our git ignore, we also have to put that file. We'll just come over here and say, oh, it's already saying it's already hiding it. So this thing over here will hide this any .local files. So we don't want to publish this .env.local, and inside of here we want to put this whole variable that they already give it to us. So I'll just paste it just like this. Now in our main.tsx, which is where we're going to generate this, we're going to import at the top from at Clerk / Clerk React. We want to import the Clerk provider, just like this. Now the provider obviously will give us the access to a bunch of different functions and things related to Clerk, as long as we pass it over, wrap it around all of our components, or the components that we actually want to access Clerk. In my view, I want the whole app to have access to Clerk's functionalities. So I'll come over here and I'll say Clerk provider, just like this, and I'll wrap my whole app around with it. And we also need to pass the publishable key over here. Now, the way that Clerk themselves recommend is to actually first grab the publishable key by saying publishable key, just like this, and then setting equal to import. Since I'm using Vite to get env variables, you have to use this pattern. So I'm going to say import.meta.env.vite Clerk publishable key, right? So if you're using CRA or Next.js, you can grab your env variable in a different way, but for us, it's like this. And then we definitely don't want to run the app if there's no key. So let's just make a simple breaking if statement by saying if publishable key is not there, then we definitely want to throw some sort of error, throw new error, missing publishable key. This is more for us to also understand what's happening, and save this. And then over here, we'll pass the key. Perfect. Now we're basically done with a lot of the setup for Clerk, which is great. We're going to close this over here, close our .env file, and start working on our app. So if you recall in the beginning of the video, we had our app completely done and I demoed it for you guys. We'd had multiple routes, right? So what I want to do here is I want to start by defining those routes in our application. We're going to obviously be using React Router DOM for that. So let's install the package. I'm going to come over here and say yarn add React Router DOM and press enter, and it will install all the packages. Again, make sure you're doing that in the client folder. Then over here at the top, I'm going to import from React Router DOM, and I want to import the browser router as a router, then the routes component, then the route component. If you're watching this video, I do expect you to know this. And like I said, I'm not going to be going into details about things that I don't think matter to the video itself. So I'm going to spend more time going more in depth with other things that I think are more important. With React Router DOM, if you have never worked with routes in React, maybe this video is a little bit more advanced for you. However, I'll still go briefly over it. So we want to define our routes, correct? So over here, we'll just use the router component that we just imported from React Router DOM. This will say to React that everything inside of this will be related to routes. We want to actually wrap all of the routes around with an app container. I'm not going to be manually showing you guys how to write the CSS because I never do this, and you guys actually have told me that you would much rather have a project like this because it decreases the length of the video by a lot, and CSS is not the main point of the video. However, the CSS will be in the description. I'm going to paste the CSS here. So if you guys are interested in copying my CSS, you can do so as well. So we're wrapping everything around with a div called app container, but inside of here, we're going to define all the routes we're going to be doing. So we're going to have routes, route number 1, which will be, at least for now, just our main route. So I'm going to say path is an empty slash. This will be our dashboard, and we'll have an element over here, which will be the component that is going to be rendered. And for now, we'll just have an h1 tag saying dashboard, right? We'll obviously create our separate component, but for now, let's just keep it like that. And then we'll have the authentication or sign in page, which for now, again, we'll just say sign in. If we save this, you'll see that in our app over here, the main page says dashboard, but the auth page says sign in. So we're correctly handling our routes. Now let's start by creating our components. So what I like to do is I like to create a folder over here called pages. And the pages folder will include all the different folders we want to have. And for each page, I actually want to create an individual folder for them, because this is how I would usually do it in a role application. Because for example, the authentication page might have multiple different files related to it, same as the dashboard page, as you will see. So we want to keep everything organized, but define the folders based on the actual meaning of the page. So we have a dashboard page and an auth page, but we might have multiple components inside of them. So for each of them, we'll create an index.tsx that are meant to represent the entry point to the route. So the main component to the route. So over here, for example, this is the index.tsx inside of the dashboard. We'll create the dashboard component, just like this. And like the one over there, we'll just return an h1 tag, h1 saying dashboard. Now we'll do the exact same thing with auth, but we'll call this auth, and this will say sign in. Now over here in our app.tsx, I'm going to import both of them manually by just saying dashboard over here, and they will automatically import at the top. And then for the sign in, we'll do the same, auth, just like this. Perfect. So now we are actually still seeing the same thing because we just put the same thing on both of the components, but at least we have created them. And I want to start with the sign in because we just created all the things related to Clerk, and signing in is the first thing we want to do in our app, right? So believe it or not, the sign in component will be the quickest one to work because of how easy Clerk is. So with Clerk, we can actually come over here at the top and import a couple components that are pre-built for React, and they make things way easier. So I'm going to say at Clerk React, and I want to import the signed in component, then the signed out component, then the sign in button component, the sign up button component, and also the user button component. Each of them has different purposes, and you will understand as we use them. So for the main point of our auth container, we'll create a div called sign in container. So sign in, I need to put class name, sign in container, just like this. And inside of here, we'll have to use two use cases, right? There's going to be two states of our app, one which we're signed out and one in which we're signed in. So for the signed out, we'll say signed out, and whatever we put over here will actually be shown whenever we're signed out. So this component just tells us if we're signed out or not. So we're going to put the sign up button over here because we want to have both options, sign up and sign in, just like this, sign in. And then over here below this, we're going to have the signed in option, right? So whenever our user signed in, what do we want to display? Maybe display a user button. Technically, when we sign in, I want to redirect us to the main page, but for just to show you guys some functionalities, I'm going to put this right here. So now let's go to our app and let's go to the auth page. You'll see that we now have both options. If I click on sign up, you'll see that it will redirect us to this application over here. Now, you might think, why would I want to be redirected to a different page? I think a user might not want this. Now, I don't think there's a problem necessarily with that, but I personally prefer to just open up a modal in our own app, so it doesn't include any redirects. And the great thing is that Clerk supports literally everything. So they support this modal functionality as long as you just put a mode over here and say that you want it to be the modal mode. Then if we refresh this and I click sign up, you'll see that now it's just a pop-up modal that appears in our app. Now let me sign in with my Gmail. I'm gonna sign in with, for example, one of my personal emails, and I'm gonna click continue. Just to trust Clerk. And now, as you can see, we were redirected to our main page. Now, how do we know if we actually signed up or signed in? Well, let me inspect the page over here. Let's go to application. With application, we can see a bunch of stuff, including our guest session ID, our Clerk DBGWT, which is a token, as you can see, and maybe even some stuff on the cookies, right? A bunch of stuff related to Clerk. Clerk is handling everything from us. Now, if you want to manage the information from the user, you could go to the dashboard and you can see that now we have a new user. It shows all of the recent signups and how many active users are using your app, right? And so much more, as you can see at the bottom. You can click on users and see information about them. Most importantly, you can actually ban a user from your application directly from Clerk. If I wanted to delete, ban, or do anything, I could just use the options over here, which is pretty good because obviously we don't have access to that. However, it's great because in our app, for example, I want to have a part of it where it necessarily shows the name of the user in the app. So we can access that using pre-built functions and hooks by Clerk. So now we're pretty much done with the auth page. I mean, we still have this user button, which technically doesn't have any functionality right now. I'll just show you guys what it is since we are automatically redirected. But what I was talking about, the auth button, is just this thing that you can add anywhere in your app. It shows the profile picture of the user's email. And if you click on it, it will show some information like the user can actually manage their own account. They can sign out. We're going to put this actually at the top over here at our navbar, as you have seen in the demo. However, it's really interesting and I wanted to just show you guys right now. So for now, let's actually just keep it like this and let's start working on our dashboard. Now, for the dashboard, I actually want to separate this page into two different components. And we're going to start by dividing it by creating the div that will hold both of them together. I'll call this div the dashboard container. So dashboard container. And inside of here, we'll put two different components that we'll create shortly. So the first one is probably going to be called the financial record form. It's the little inputs that you can add a new like tracking expense or a new income to your actual tracker. And the second one will be the financial record list, which will contain all of the different things you have, and you can edit them, make the changes, whatever you want. So I'll just put over here, first of all, an h1 tag as the title of our page. So I'll say h1 and I'll say welcome. Then here will be the name of the user, and I'll say here are your finances. Like I said, since we're using Clerk, we can easily access the name of the user by actually using one of their hooks. So I'll come over here at the top and I'll say import from @Clerk, and then I'll import the user like this, use user hook, and then over here at the bottom, we'll just say const equal to use user, and we can just grab directly the user from here. Now we'll say user question mark just in case it is null, and then we'll access the first name of them. So we can actually access information from them directly from this object, and here we're just asking for the first name. You'll see that if we go here, it already shows welcome Pedro because it got that information from Clerk. Now I want to come down here and I want to create the actual other two components. We'll create them inside of the dashboard folder. The first one is going to be financial record form.tsx, and the other one is going to be financial record list.tsx. The financial record form will just create the component like this, financial record form, and we'll return again a div saying record form. Then we'll copy this, we'll paste it on the list, and just change this to list, and then record list. Now we'll come to the dashboard and we're just gonna manually put here the financial record form first, and it's gonna be a self-closing component, and then the financial record list, which is also going to be a self-closing component, and we should see both of the components being rendered over here. So let's start with the financial record form. For this one, we actually want to create a form, right? I'm going to start by creating this div called the form container, and the form, like you saw in the beginning of the video, is going to include a bunch of inputs. And I thought a lot about this. I don't think it's valuable for me to manually write this whole form because it is pretty big. However, I've made this form already, and I'm just going to paste it here and go over each of the inputs so you guys can see. And as you can see, this is how our form is going to look like. Obviously, I didn't add any of the functionality because that's part of what I want to teach in this tutorial, but the form is pretty simple. We have here a form tag, as you can see, that wraps around the entire form. Then for each field that we have, we're going to create this div called form field and put the labels and the inputs inside of it. So if you look over here, this is how our form looks before actually adding any styling. It's supposed to only grab the description of the expense slash income that you're adding to your tracker, the amount, which is a number to input, as you can see, and it can go negative because that would be an expense. Then the category, which can be all of this, and then the payment method, which could be credit card, cash, and bank transfer. So a lot of different types of inputs, and all of them are described as you can see, right? And also all of them are required. Now, at the bottom, we also have an add record, which when we implement the functionality, I want to be able to add all of this into the list down here and also into our database. So this is our form. And now comes the fun part, which is actually writing the functionality for this. So the functionality for the form is going to be pretty simple because what we want is just to be able to grab the information inside of these inputs. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to create a couple states. The first one is going to be the description state, and this description state is going to be used to handle the value of the description input, right? And we're going to make one of this for each of them. So whenever a user types on this input, we're going to change the value of the state to be equal to the value of the input so that we can keep track of what every input has. And then whenever we want to add the record, whenever we click on this button, we'll send all that information into our database. So we'll create the state. The description one is a string, and I'll just copy and paste for all the other ones as well. So we have description, amount, category, and payment method. So I think it's 4. So I'll put over here amount and set amount. Now, obviously, this is this isn't a string. However, we'll grab it as a string since this is an input. Then we'll convert it into a number. Description, here we'll go category and then set category, just like this. And the final one is payment method. And we'll change this to set payment method. Great. Now we'll need to have a handle submit function, which will be called whenever the user submits the form. And we'll pass this inside of this form as the on submit. And we'll pass the handle submit. Now, how do we actually make it such that whenever we click on this button, it submits the form? Well, we make the button of type submit, so it knows automatically that whenever someone clicks on this, it will call this handle submit function. Now, how exactly do we submit this? Well, the way we do it is here in the handle submit, we'll first of all grab the event, right? Because we're using a form and this is TypeScript, so we actually need to put some. Oh yeah, we're building this in TypeScript. I completely forgot for a second. So we do need to put some types. So this use states, they're all strings. So I'm going to put the string type over here. And for the event, we're going to have to put a react.form event. And then this is an HTML form element, just like this. And with the event, I'll just say event.prevent default, so it doesn't refresh the page when we submit the form. And then when we get that out of the way, let's start creating the structure of our new record. So I haven't created the database yet or the server. That's actually what I'm going to do next. The way I'm structuring this tutorial is I want to create a little bit of the client just to give you guys an idea of what we're building. And right when I need to actually submit stuff, which is right after this, I'm going to go ahead and do all of the backend stuff at once and then come back to React. But for a new record, how the record is going to look in our database is the following. It's going to have an ID, but the thing is, the ID of the record, we don't have access to it yet. Whenever we submit it to MongoDB, which is the database we're using, it's going to auto-generate it. But we do need to know the user ID for this. So the user who created this record. So for this one, we're just going to have to call the user hook again. So I'm going to say import from @Clerk, and then I'm going to call the user. Again, I'll come up here, or down here actually, and I'll say const equal to user, and then I'm going to grab the user, and I'm just going to pass here the user.id, right? And then down here, we're going to put the date in which this was submitted. This is also part of the record, and we're just going to put the current date. So we're going to say new date. Then we need to pass the description, and this will be equal to the value of this date. So description. Then the amount. The amount is supposed to be a number or a float. So this over here isn't correct because it's a string. However, it's a string because when we grab it from the input, it's going to be a string. However, we can just convert that string into a float by saying parse float and then amount. Then we'll put category down here and pass in the category as well. And then finally payment method and pass in the payment method. Now, after we create this new record, we're going to go down here and we actually want to call some sort of function that we haven't created yet called add record and passing the new record. Now, obviously we haven't created this. This is actually going to be after we finish the server stuff. This is what's going to call the database or call our server and send this data. But we'll just keep it here as a comment so we know that this is where it's going to go. And after we submit the form, we're going to come over here and create the set the fields that we just altered back to empty because we don't want to keep them there, right? The description field, whenever we finish it, is going to be empty, and also the other ones. So set amount and set category, and then the last one is set payment method. Did I put set category with a capital S? Yeah. Okay, set category, and then this one will be set payment method. Perfect. Now what this will do is you'll see that actually if I start typing on this, right, and I press on add record, actually I need to put all of them. So I'll just put all of them for once. If I click on add record, nothing is going to happen because currently we're not setting the states of that we created over here as parts of the values of the inputs. So that's what we have to do. We'll come over here in each of the inputs and we'll set the value. So for the description input, it will have a value of description. So now if we were to put a description here, yeah, we also have to put the on change. So I'll just do this for all of them. So I'll put a value over here. I'll put a value over here. Obviously change this to amount and change this to category. And then I'll put a value over here as well and change this to payment method. Now let's actually add the on change, right? We want to make some changes to this as the user clicks on the inputs or makes changes to the input. So on change, we'll grab the event over here and we just set the specific state related to this input equal to the event.target.value, just like this. And we do the same for all the other ones, but this one will be set amount. And then this one will be set category. And then finally, this one will be set payment method. Now, if we save this, you'll see that what happens is we can now add a description, right? And it's actually storing all this information in the states we created. We can choose one, we can choose one. Now, if I click on this and we had the add record function, it would have sent the data into the database. But for now, it's just gonna clear out all of the choices we made and pretend like it did. So that's kind of the basis of how our financial record form component is gonna look like. Obviously, it's not done yet, but I think it's a great place for us to segue into start to work with the backend. Okay, everyone, so let's start building our backend. So the first thing we need to do is create our database, which is going to store our information related to our personal finance tracker. So I'm going to be using MongoDB. However, if you're interested, you can use any sort of database management system. And just MongoDB is actually free, so it's also going to be this whole project is free if you're interested in that. So I'm going to log into my account and show you guys how to set up everything straight up from the dashboard. Okay, everyone, as you can see, we have here our MongoDB access, our dashboard, and I want to create a new app inside of my dashboard. So the way I do this is, first of all, I have here my organization. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to click on new project. This is the one I use for my videos, this account. I'm going to give a name for my project. I'm going to call it Personal Finance Tracker. You can call it whatever you want. Then we're going to click next. I am the project owner. However, if you're working with multiple people, you can do that too. Click create project. And the project in MongoDB should have created, as you can see. Now, what we want to do is we want to go to database over here. And this is where we're going to actually build our database. I'm going to click on build database. And there's a bunch of options, obviously. I want to choose the free one. The free one goes up to 512 megabytes of storage. It's also shared RAM and shared CPU. However, if you're interested in paying, I don't think MongoDB is that expensive. You can go into the other options as well. So over here at the bottom, we need to create a cluster. And a cluster is something that allows a MongoDB database to either horizontally scale across many servers with sharding or to replicate data, ensuring high availability with MongoDB replica sets. So it's a way for you to determine where you're going to deploy your application. And by working with a cluster, you enhance the overall performance of the database. And in our case, we just need to give here a name and MongoDB will be doing everything for us, including the deployment of it. So I'm just going to call it Personal Finance Tracker, something like that. And we can choose a provider. I'm going to choose AWS because I think it's the best one out of all the options. Then we need to choose the region. I don't know, it might assume I'm in Brazil right now because I'm Brazilian. However, I am currently in Vancouver. So let me see where they have here. I'll probably choose Oregon because Oregon is closer to Vancouver. And you choose the region where you think your users or even yourself will most likely be. So then I'm going to click on create deployment. And it's going to obviously ask us to choose this. I'm going to do all of this and then cut back to when it's done. Okay, as you can see, now it's asking us how we want to connect to this database. And we're going to need a username and a password. I'm going to copy this. I'm just going to choose the most basic user type that they can have. I'm just going to copy this password. I'm going to save it inside of our code over here. Let me just open this up. So we're just going to paste this thing over here. Probably, let me just go into my server over here and create a file called index.ts. And I'm just going to paste this as the password, as a comment. Yeah, and then the username is just my last name and my birth date. Okay, so I'm going to click on create database user. This is to determine we're creating a user who's going to be able to make changes to your database and connect to your database. You can have multiple people if you're working with many people. However, for me, I'm just going to have that. Then it's going to ask us how we want to connect to it. So now it's asking us how we want to connect to our project. I'm going to choose here the MongoDB for VS Code because it will show us a connection link that will help us connect to our actual database. Now to connect to our database, we actually want to start developing our backend, right? So I'm gonna close over here everything related to the client for now, just so we have some organization, and just keep the server folder. Then I'm gonna open up our terminal, and you see we're currently in the client folder. So I wanna cd back to our main folder and cd into the server folder. And then here I want to run yarn init-y, and it will basically create a package.json for us. Then I want to install all of the dependencies that I want to work with in our backend, and I'll just do all of them at once for you. So I'm going to say yarn add express, which is how we're going to build our API. Then I want to install the TypeScript package for Express. So I'm going to say types/express. Then we're going to install Mongoose, which is going to be our ARM for MongoDB. It's going to help us set up all the MongoDB stuff. And we're going to install again the @types/mongoose. Then we're going to install NodeMon to keep our server running. TS Node, because that will help us set up TypeScript. And then obviously TypeScript, just like this. And also I want to create our TS config file. So it seems like you need to install this package. Oh, I don't need to install Mongoose types, but the other ones, oh, it didn't seem like they installed. So let's just redo this, but remove the Mongoose types, just like this. Press enter, and it should all install perfectly. So now that we have that, I recommend that you guys install TSC. This is a package that you can use to set up TypeScript. As you can see, it is gonna help us in our command line. To install actual TypeScript here, we'll just run yarn tsc --init, just like this. As you can see, it will create a TS config file for us, which will ensure that we can actually use TypeScript in our applications. Now, I just want to make some small changes to this because how we're going to compile TypeScript is very simple. We're going to ask our TS config to make it such that we have two packages. One, which is going to be here a folder called build, and one which is going to be our source folder. The source folder is going to be the TypeScript that we write, and the build is the compiled JavaScript that is generated from that TypeScript. For those who don't know, when you actually build an application using TypeScript, the final code is JavaScript. So like your TypeScript is just to help your development, right? Not to actually, it doesn't compile, it compiles into JavaScript after you're done with your project. So to make that work, we're gonna have to change this to like uncomment these two things from your TS config. The first one is the root directory. It's gonna be the source folder, this thing over here. The second one is the output directory. So this thing over here, which is going to be where we're going to put our compiled JavaScript, and it's going to be in our build folder. It seems like it's giving us an error here. Let me check where. Is it here? It seems to be a problem because index.ts is not inside of source, but we'll put that there, and you'll see that the error should be fixed. Yeah, as you can see. So now we kind of set up a lot of the main things that I wanted. The last setup for our backend is in our package.json. We'll write some scripts to actually run our application. So I'm gonna come over here and put scripts, and we'll start with 3 scripts separately. One is gonna be yarn start, which is going to run node./build/index.ts, right? That's the main start command of our application. Then we want to have a build command that is gonna just basically run tsc-p dot. This is what's gonna build and compile our application into an actual runnable application. Then finally, we want to have a dev script. So the dev will be the one that runs nodemon. So we'll say nodemon./source/index.ts, because that's going to be the entry point of our server. And for those who've never worked with nodemon, basically what it does is if I run over here yarn dev, it will run our server, and every time we save our file is gonna, as you can see, it's gonna rerun the server so that we don't have to keep killing our server and running it again. Obviously right now there's nothing in our index.ts, but that's gonna change really shortly. Right now, what I want to do is I want to import some of the main packages that we're going to be using from Express. So straight off the bat, I want to import Express over here, just like that. I'll actually remove this. We can import any types later, but I want to import Express from Express and import Mongoose from Mongoose. Then we want to create our app variable. And to do that, I actually want to use some TypeScript types, like the Express one over here, and set it equal to Express as a function. Let's actually import this. Maybe I should have just imported it directly from here, but we'll just do that. Then over here, I want to create the port that is going to be the entry to our app. So the backend is going to be on port 3001 because our React, actually, since we're not using CRA, it's not even 3000, but I'm just so used to always putting the development port in a backend to 3001, so I would keep it like that. But you can just do whatever you want. And you do the process.env.port because whenever you deploy this app, you can obviously put an environment variable for the port, and it will prioritize this one over the development one that you have over here. Then we want to apply the middleware into all of our endpoints to basically allow JSON into the bodies of each request, right? This is a very standard way to make things work in Express, and this is going to run with every single request and every single endpoint. Then we want to set up our MongoDB connection. This one is pretty simple. We want to create a variable which is going to be the Mongo URI. URI is going to be a string that connects our project to our database, and the actual string is this thing over here. So we'll copy this, we'll paste it over here as a string, as you can see. And you may notice that there's not a lot of changes we want to make over here. We could obviously create an environment variable for this as well, and I would definitely recommend you to do so, because what we're doing is, you can see this connection string includes our username for MongoDB and the password that we saved over here. So they do it automatically for us. We don't even need to keep that. And it also references the cluster and the database that we're working on. So that's perfect. We have everything set up. Now to connect, we'll just say mongoose. Wait, I don't need indentation. So mongoose dot connect. Pass the Mongo URI, and then grab a dot then. Whenever we successfully connect, I just want to console log a message saying connected to MongoDB. And then if it fails, we want to obviously grab any possible errors and just console log them. So I'll actually put console error because that will make it more obvious to us. And I'll say could not, actually I'll say failed to connect to MongoDB. And then I'll put here the error message as well. So if we save this, you should see connected to MongoDB, meaning that we successfully connected to our database. Great. And down here, we could obviously create any endpoints if we wanted to, but I just want to listen to the port 3001 so that our API is actually running. So I'll come over here and just say that if it successfully listens to the port, I want to say server running on port, and then I'll put here the port that it is running on. Perfect. So we successfully, as you can see, also ran our server. Great. A lot of the initial setup is done. So in order to get our database running, we have to create the actual tables, or what is known as the schema of our database, which will be where we define our how our data will look like. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to come over here, create a folder called schema. And inside of this, I'll create the financial record.ts file. In our collection, how it's known as MongoDB, we're going to be having a data set which will be comprised of the same fields that we made in the front end in the beginning of this tutorial. So we have to define those, how it's going to look like in MongoDB. So the way we do that is by importing first Mongoose from the Mongoose library. And then we're going to create what is known as the schema for this. So I'm going to come over here, say const financial record schema equal to new mongoose dot schema, and then we have to pass in over here an interface defining how the schema will look like. So over here we want to create the interface, so I'll say interface called financial record, and we're gonna have the same interface basically in the front end as well, but it's gonna have the following items. First, a user ID, which will be a string. Now, the user ID will just be like we made in the front end, the ID of the user who's logged in, so we can keep track of what finance, like what personal finance record is from which user. Then we're gonna put a date, which will be of type date. Then description, which will be string. Most of the other ones are not gonna be string. Amount is actually gonna be number. Category is gonna be string, and payment method is gonna be string as well. Now save this, we're gonna pass this right over here, and now Mongoose knows how our schema is supposed to look like. However, MongoDB and Mongoose has different ways of defining data types, so we have to also describe it in the same way as them. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy all of this, paste it over here. Actually, it might just be faster if I just manually write it. So user ID, to define it in a Mongoose kind of way, we have to say its type. So the type will be string. And then we have to say if it's required or not. So there's a lot of things you can put in while defining how your data set will look like in Mongo. But the ones that we're just going to use is like the type of the variable and also if it's required or not. So obviously all of them are required, and like 99% of them are strings, but we'll just copy and paste all of them like this and then manually change them. So date will be of type date and will also be required. Description will be the same as that. Amount will be of type number. So I'll put this as number. And then category will be of type string as well. And then finally, let's have payment method, and will also be of type string. Now to define the schema and create a model out of it, we'll create a variable here called financial record model equal to mongoose.model. We pass in the financial record interface that we created in TypeScript. We give a name to this collection, so it's like giving the name to this database. We'll just call it, which is like giving the name to this table, and we'll call it financial record like this, and we'll pass in the financial record schema. And then at the bottom over here, we'll just export default financial record model. And now anywhere in our backend, when making API requests, we can actually make changes to this database with this model by using this financial record model. Now, where are we going to use this? Well, we're going to use that in our endpoints or our routes. So I'm going to create a folder here called routes. And you might be noticing that I'm creating folders even if there's only one thing here, because if you want to expand this project, you can add more schemas, right? Make the database a little bit more complicated, or add more routes if you want to do that as well. In our case, I want to create a route for the financial records. So I'm going to say financial records.ts. And then over here, we're going to do everything we need to set up the routes. First of all, we're going to import express and also the types request and response from express, just like that. Then we're going to import the financial record model that we just created so that we can make any database operations. Then we're going to define a router by setting it equal to express.router. Now, I'm assuming you've worked with Node.js before if you're watching this. However, I'll explain it in the simplest way possible. With Node.js and Express, you can create API endpoints, right? And you can do them manually over here by just using the app.get or app.post. And that's how you create a post or a get request using Express. However, if you want to separate and not create all your endpoints in this main file using the app, you can use routes, which is kind of like a very good way to organize your project. The way we do it is we come over here, we create a middleware which we're going to say app.use over here. We put the kind of like the route definition of how we want this endpoint to be reached. So for example, we're talking about only financial record stuff inside of this route, correct? So probably to access it, we'll make a route called financial record, right? Just like this. And now inside of this, if we want to define any specific route, may it be a GET request, a POST request, we can make an extension to this financial records. So any endpoint we create inside of here can be accessed by first putting this as the extension to the API endpoint URL, and then whatever we define over here. If it doesn't make sense right now, it will make sense soon enough, because we also can put over here the financial record router that we don't have right now, but we're going to create inside of this folder. So over here, we're going to export at the bottom the router. So export default router. And then at the top in our index.js, we'll just import this by say import financial record router from /routes/ financial records. And then we can just apply it like this. Perfect. Now let me close this and open this. Now we can define our routes. So first of all, what is the first route we want to define in our API? Well, we want to be able to query the list of all the expenses and incomes that a user has put inside of their financial tracker. So we're going to want to get everything from our database which matches the user ID of the user logged in. So we get all of their information. So the way we do this is we say router.get, because it's a GET request, and we'll just put over here /get all by user ID. So this is how we define our route. Obviously we can call it whatever we want, but I want to call it like this, and we'll make this async, and we'll grab a rec for request and a res for response. It's very similar to any other API library, right? So what we want here is to, since we're using async await, we'll make a try catch, just like this, try catch, grab any errors over here. And inside of our try, what we want to try is to find all of the records in the financial record model. So I'll say const records equal to await financial record model dot find. And then we just specify over here what property or what condition we want to find this. So since we want it to be all the records where the user ID is equal to the user ID of the user logged in, we have to obviously get that user ID from the user whenever we make this API request. So in the front end, we're not going to just make the request of this, we're also going to send information. And in a GET request, a great way to send IDs is by using params. So we're going to put a param over here called user ID. We'll then catch this param over here by saying const user ID is equal to rec.params.user ID. Just like that. And then we'll just pass this user ID over here. Now, what we want is if the records array that is going to be returned from this is actually empty, so we'll say of length equal to 0, then we probably want to return some sort of message saying like, hey, there's no records found for that user. So we're going to return a response of status 404. And if you're not familiar to statuses, this is a great way for you to kind of memorize, right? I'll just put, actually, you can just search on Google. You can see what I just searched here. All HTTP status codes. You can see 404 is for not found. You don't have to memorize this, but we're going to be following this pattern. And we're returning that status code and sending back a message saying no records found for the user. And then dot. Okay. Perfect. Now we accounted for the fact that in case there's no items for the user, we're returning an error. But in case there is, we're going to return over here status 200 as success dot send the records. Perfect. Now, if we catch any errors, you'll notice that for all of them, I'll just return a status of 500, which is a service error, and we'll send back the actual error message, whatever it may be, it will catch over here. So that's our first route. Perfect. We can start making the other ones right now. We'll make all the routes first and then make the request to them in the front end, because I feel like that will make the video more organized. So the second one we want to create is the one to add a new record. We're going to be adding something to the database. So this will be a post request. And the post request I'll actually put over here. I'll actually not use any specific endpoint routes over here, because if we put an endless slash, it will just be a post request to the financial records route, which kind of is self-explanatory in itself. I'll only put extra names into the routes if it's something more specific, like in this case where we're getting all users by ID, by user ID. You know what I mean? So in this case, we'll just keep it empty. Then over here, we have to think about how are we going to structure this request. So think about it this way. We want to send the data not through params, because when we create a new post, a new record, we want to send it through the body. So we'll assume that the user is sending the new record as an object through the body. So we're going to grab it through the body like this. New record body is equal to rec.body. Then we want to create the new record, the new MongoDB version entry that is going to go into the database. So we're going to say new records equal to await, and then grab the financial record model and convert this new record body that we just got from our request into the MongoDB version of it. And I just noticed that I put await here. This should be new, not await. Await comes now, because now, since we created the new entry and modified it to be the same data type as what MongoDB wants, we'll create a saved record as the new record that was saved and say await new record. Oh, I need to put an equal sign, await new record dot save, just like that. And since that's successful, we'll just return a status of 200 and return back the saved record as a confirmation that it worked. If not, we'll just send back the error as well. So pretty quick. It will get quicker as we move forward. The next one will probably be the update one. This usually tends to be a little bit harder, because what we want is to be able to update anything inside of our entry, right? If you recall from the demo, there's going to be a table. We can click on any of those entries and make the change. So to do that, we'll have to make a put request, which is kind of what is used for updating. And actually, I'll just copy this and put it over here and change this to put. And again, since we're updating the entries in itself and there's nothing specific about it, I'll just keep an empty slash, and you'll be able to distinguish both of them because one is a post request and one is a put. So despite them having the same route, you can obviously make different requests. So now for the put, what I'm expecting is that in the front end, when we make this request, we're going to send through the body the new version of the entry so that we can just directly update it here. So in the body, we'll just make this new record body and keep it the same way as from the post. However, when we come here to create the actual update, we're not going to create a new one. We're going to create a record over here, record equals to await financial record model, and we have to use the function find by ID and update. Just like this. Now with this, you have to pass in two arguments to this. First, the ID, and then the new record body, right? So you're altering the item with this ID and putting this new object inside of it. Now, how do we get the ID? Well, the same way we got the ID of the user in the GET request. We're gonna use params over here, but this time it's not the user ID, it's the actual entry ID. And the way we're gonna grab that is same way, const ID is equal to rec.params ID. And seems to be working perfectly. Then at the end over here, we'll just ask, okay, if there isn't a new record, right? This record, then we return a res.status 404. So we just say like, okay, nothing was found. So this isn't the case where you try to find by ID, but it doesn't actually find the thing. So it doesn't actually update. So we just send back an empty message with a 404 status code. But if everything works out, we'll just send back the record. Also, I'll put here to say that this is new, because it will just say that it's a new version of this record. And the put request seems to be perfectly fine. The last one is the delete, which in my opinion is the easiest one, and you guys will understand why. I'll probably just copy the put and paste it over here. So for the delete, we'll change this to router.delete. We'll also grab the ID for this one, and I'll remove the body, I'll remove everything here. What we want is to just say const record is equal to await financial record model dot find by ID and delete, similar to the update one. But this one, we don't have to pass any actual information. We just have to pass the ID over here. And if no record is found, so no record is deleted, we'll send back a 404 error. But if everything is successful, we'll send back the 200 with the deleted record. So we'll save this, and pretty much we have all of our endpoints set up. Now, all we have left is to actually build the front end, which will consume this API. So we're going to go over here, close all of this up, and finally go back to our client. So over here inside of our dashboard financial record form, we want to create a function that will make a post request to our API and send this information. If you recall, this is what we did in the beginning of the video. It has all the required information that is going to go through the body of the request and actually add it to the database. And that's when we're going to finally be able to test to see if we set up all the database correctly. So this add record function that I put over here, I want to organize this project in a way that I would normally in a like big scale application that I would be sending to multiple users and try to scale as a project. So the way I would do this is to just create context and a personal hook for that context that would share all of the different information related to the records. So to do that, we're going to go over here and we're going to create over here a folder called contexts. And inside of here and over here, we'll create a file called financial record context.ts. This will be our state manager in this application. This is where all of our states and all of our functions that alter that state will exist. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create our context. So I'm going to export over here a const called financial records context, set it equal to create context, which is imported from React. And inside of here, we need to put the context type. So what are we going to be returning from this context? Then I'll just pass undefined here as the initial value, but let's create the interface to what our context will contain. So I want to be able to access this context anywhere in my app. And I want it to contain not only the state of the records that we're going to display in our list, but also I want it to contain all the functions that might be used to alter those records, so that in any component in my application, I can just easily use the use context hook and grab those functions or grab the records themselves. So I'll create a financial records context type, which will be the return type. It will have the records as the first thing, and the records will be a list of each of these records, right? So what I want to do is I want to grab actually from our inside of our server, inside of our SRC, and inside of our schema, actually, I want to grab this interface that we created because we're going to be reusing it in our front end. Over here, I'm going to paste this. Also, the difference with this one is that we actually need to put the ID here of the financial record, because in the backend one, we're not generating the ID, right? When we submit that data to MongoDB, it's going to generate the ID itself. But for here, it's what we're gathering from MongoDB. So it's going to have the ID. But sometimes when we're creating it, we might want to make it optional so that we don't have to input an ID right straight off the bat. So it will look something like this. Then we're going to put the financial record over here. and we'll make a array out of it. Then we're gonna have the add record function. Now, how will this add record function look like? Well, this add record function will probably be a function which we will pass in a new record we want to add. So as the argument, it will be record of type financial record, and it will return void because we're not gonna be returning anything. It's just gonna be, the main purpose of it is you pass in a record and it sends the data to the database. The update record will be a little bit similar, but it will actually require the ID of the record you want to alter, plus the new record that you want to be sending. Now, this new record will be of type partial financial record. The reason why it's partial is because when we send the new record, we don't necessarily want to send everything, right? Like when we call this function, we'll only put the information that matters, the information that, and the type of new record will be financial record as well. And again, this will also return void. Perfect. Then delete record it will just require an ID of the record we want to delete. And again, it will return void. If this doesn't make a lot of sense now, it's because we haven't created those functions yet, but we'll do so in a second. We just have to pass this over here and also say that the type can be undefined. Perfect. Now we want to create a component that will be our provider. So I'll say export const financial records provider. And it will just have one prop called children, because we're going to be grabbing the children from whichever components we wrap this around with. Obviously, it gives a problem, like it gives an error for children. So to fix this, I'll just say that the type of this is children of type react.reactNode, just like this. Then inside of this provider, we want to return the financial records. Why is it not appearing? Oh, it's because this is a TS file. Yeah, make sure to change this into a TSX file. I apologize, or else you won't be able to return the provider. So I'll say financial records context dot provider, just like that. Then inside of here, we'll just render the children, because this is just a provider. It's just supposed to wrap around other components. The value for this context, though, will be equal to all the functions that we're going to create inside of this provider. So just straight off the bat, what I want to do here is I want to create a state which we're going to share called the record state. So it's going to be an array of records. It will have the following type, financial record array, just like that. And it will be called records, and it have a function called set records. Then we'll pass the records as the first thing that we want to pass in our context. Then we want to create all the functions that we want to call to alter the state of the record, and that will also actually alter and make the API requests. So before we do any of those, I want to just actually test out if fetching these records and displaying them is working, and also if I can add a new record. So we'll keep the update and the delete for after we've done all of those two. So I'll actually comment them out, because for now we are not going to return them in this context. We're only going to return the records and the add records. So I'll create here the add records function. And if you recall, it just requires a record to be sent of type financial record. And over here is where we're going to make all the API request stuff. So we'll pass this here as well. And you'll see that now it's not giving us an error, right? Is it? Oh, it needs to be add record, not add records. Okay. Now, to actually access this function, what we have to do is we have to go to our app, so where we define our routes. And inside of dashboard, I actually want to wrap all of this around with financial record provider, so that everything inside of the dashboard component, so all the components, will have access to this context. So now inside of here, we can go to the top and just say const equals to use context and grab that specific context for us. However, an easy way to deal with this is actually inside of our context provider over here, right at the bottom, we'll create a custom hook called use financial records that will grab the context that is already created inside of this file and set it equal to use context. Grab the type that again is already defined in this file and put the financial records context inside of here. And then if there is no context, so if it doesn't find any context, we can maybe throw an error, although of course it will find. This is just for debugging purposes. And it will say something like use financial records must be used within a provider of financial. Actually, I'll just copy this name over here. So this is just in case we try to access this hook inside of the auth component, for example, because it's not inside of the financial records provider. And then at the end, we just return whatever is returned from this context. The reason why we made this hook is because now we don't have to import the use context hook. We don't have to import the individual context or its types of anything. We just actually import the use financial records hook like this, use financial records, and it will automatically import and it will handle all of that for us. And it will return the records and the add record function. Now, we're not going to use the records inside of here, but we'll use the add record because that's what we're calling down here. And if we uncomment this now, you'll see that now it kind of works, but it gives us an error, and I know what the error is. This error is because since we're getting the user ID from the Clerk hook, as you can see, obviously if you're not logged in, this can be null, right? It can be undefined. So we have to add an edge case, which will probably never happen. But in case this is empty, we'll put an empty string. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but you'll see that it takes away the error, right? So now that we know we're sending this information to here to this add record function, let's write the implementation of it. So in order to do that, I'm going to be using the fetch API. So we're already grabbing this record from here. We just have to make this function async so that we can use async await. Then over here, we're going to say await fetch. Then we'll put the link to our API. Now our API is running inside of our local host, right? It's running over here. So it will actually be, the link to it will be http / localhost 3001, since that's the endpoint or the port we defined. And then we put / over here. And if we go back to our server, if you recall, we created some routes, right? And the financial record route is inside of the financial records route string. So we'll just put it over here. And since we're making a post request to financial routes, we have to go to where we define the routes. So this one over here. And we'll see that our post request is actually, there's no specification to it like this one. So it will just be an empty /. So this should be enough as long as we define that this is a post request inside of the fetch. We'll do that by just putting a comma over here and saying that the method of this request is post. Then we also have to pass in the body that we're going to send. And the body we're going to send is a JSON that is stringified into, like it grabs the record that we have over here and it stringifies it just like that. And we pass it through the body. Then down here, if we want to do something with it, like this is obviously an asynchronous call, so we can grab the response from it like this. And we can just see that if response is equal to okay, so if response was okay, if this was a successful attempt at adding a record, then we know that it was successfully added. So what we can do is we can grab the new record. So grab a new record that is going to be returned from the request. So response.json. And then we can set our records array in our React frontend to optimistically change its value, right? Since we added a new one, we want to change this array to be the same array as before, but now have the new record, just like that. It's giving us an error right now because technically we're not handling this this promise correctly. We're gonna say try here, just like this, try and catch. Again, an error in case something happens. But in this try catch, we'll grab this thing by saying await, just here, and we'll grab the value and just add it directly. You see the error has disappeared. We can error handle here by making some error messages. I'm not going to do that for this video because I think it will take too much time. However, this is perfectly fine. Hopefully it is working. We can actually test to see if it's working. The way we're going to do that is we're going to come to our MongoDB thing over here. And we know we have this database, right? That we have just created. Let me see if it's going to appear here. Yeah, the personal finance tracker. We can click on browse collections. And as you can see, it gives us all the collections that exist in this database. By default, it comes with this sample mflix that you can just delete if you're interested in deleting that. I don't even care that much, but we have here our financial records collection, as you can see. Inside of here, this is what we created directly from our backend code. Now, let's test to see if this will actually add a new entry to this if we try to create a new record here. So I'll put a description. I'll say that this is an expense. So it will be a new camera amount, I don't know, $500. But since it's an expense, it's negative $500. Category, it should be it should be other. Payment, it was a credit card purchase. And let's check to see as well here in our network tab to see if there was a successful network request. We'll click on add record. Oh, and it seems like it failed. So let's see why it failed. It says internal error. So no response was even given. It was just a 500. But we can see we did send the correct information. Now, let's check to see what happened. First of all, we know that it isn't here because or else we would be seeing the data here. If we refresh this, unless there was, no, nothing was added. And the post request that we created, let's see what causes it to have a 500 level. So if there was obviously any error, but it's not very explanatory, right? There isn't a lot of information on what might have happened. I think what the problem is, and I'm actually right now thinking again, I'm pretty sure what the problem is we didn't actually install and handle cores. So let's do that. Let's install cores into our server. So cd server, and then run yarn add cores. This will help us determine the policies for cross communication between our API and our frontend. So we'll import cores from cores. This will probably resolve everything because you just come over here, you say app.use cores, and this actually should fix it. Let's try again. I'll say haircut, amount of negative $50, category, I don't know, entertainment. It was a credit card purchase. Let's look to see if it was a successful request, and it wasn't again. And again, there was no data in our database. So I think maybe an issue. I mean, this isn't really an issue, but I'll just install the types for cores anyways, and see what happens. I think it will just remove the error. Yeah, but I doubt it will actually make any changes to this. Let's try again. Haircut. I have an idea of what it might be, and I'm actually keeping this in the video because I want you guys to see how I debug. I think it's very helpful. I'm gonna try to add the record. It fails. I think it's just because I didn't put headers into my fetch request. So let's come over here to our add record fetch request. Let me put headers over here and specify the content type. So I'll say content type and say that it will be an application/JSON. Save this and let's try again. Open this up. Let's open the network tab. go to haircut, then -50, category entertainment, credit card, add record, and it seems like it was successful. Yeah, it was successful. It even returned us the ID of the item, which is only generated by MongoDB. So we know it actually was successfully added to our database. And if I refresh this, I'm 100% sure the thing will appear over here. As you can see, we successfully sent the information to our database. So now that we've done that, I'm actually going to write the functionality for displaying the list of records that we have in the database, because finally we have one record in the database. So we have over here this records thing, right? This records array, but we're not grabbing all of the records in our database. We're not accessing the endpoint that we created over here to grab all of the records by user ID. So let's implement a little bit of code that will do that. So inside of this add record, I want to create a function called fetch records, just like this. This function will be very self-explanatory. All we want to do is make a fetch request. So we'll do the same we did with the add record. We'll grab a response. We'll make this async, and we'll make await fetch. And then over here, we'll put the same endpoint. However, remember that we have an extra thing, right? We have the get all by user ID, and we also have the params to pass. So the way we specify this, we just put it directly here. And to pass the params, we'll actually have to directly inject this into the string by actually making this into a backtick, as you can see, and putting a $, and then curly braces, and then just passing the user.id. Now, how do we get that user ID? Well, we're going to grab it from the use user hook. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say const equal to use user, which we'll get from Clerk. And we'll grab the user here, similar to what we've done so far. And we'll just put a question mark in case that's not actually, it's undefined. And in case it's actually undefined, we'll also put a conditional to send an empty string just in case this is this is nil. So now, since this is not a post request, a fetch request for a get request is actually, it's fine to just send it like this. So we're coming down here at the bottom. We're going to say if response.ok. So if it was a successful response, then we'll grab the list of records by saying await records or response.json. So we'll destructor the JSON, we'll set it equal to records, and then we're going to set the records array equal to the records that we get back from our database. Perfect. Now this should work, and we can actually even return this function. However, we want this to be called on render, right? So we're going to be using a use effect over here. So we'll say use effect, and we'll be calling this fetch records function, and we only want to run this once, just once. And now nothing is happening, but we can actually console log the records that we get back. It will run immediately. So if I actually refresh this and look at my console log, we should see the only record that we have actually console logged, or not. It seems to be causing an issue because it seems like we're sending the thing without the user ID. So let's come back here and let's actually remove this. And let's say if no user, then return. So we're not going to do anything if there's no user, and we make sure that is there. But then we put the user as in the dependency list of the use effect. So whenever there's a change to the user, it will request again just to make sure that we get the correct information. Let's inspect now, and we should see that we correctly grabbed the data, and the array of records for this specific user is only one because that's the only one we added, but you can see we're correctly fetching it. So what we want to do with this now is we want to give it back in our context, which is something we're already doing. But since we have that information now, all we have to do left is build the UI that will actually display the list of records, which will all go inside of this financial record list component. Now, this component is a little bit complicated because we're going to be using a library called React Table to make that beautifully looking table that I showed you in the beginning of the video. But I'll try to explain as best as I can. And don't worry if you're confused with the documentation of React Table, because it's just a library. You don't need to memorize it. Like if you understand at least how to do it yourself and how to manage the library yourself, then that's good enough. Because I do think that React Table has a little bit of a difficult documentation, but it creates beautiful tables. So let's start by just grabbing the records from the use financial records hook that we created. So use financial records, we'll grab the records. And obviously here we're also going to be grabbing the update and delete functions, but we haven't created those yet because we have no need for them yet. So over here, what we want is to return a div with a class name of, and I'll say it, table container, because this is where it's going to be the table, right? Then over here, we're going to define a table. And the table will have the following headers. So we'll put th, sothead like this, and the first thead, and all of this will be handled by React Table. So for now, we'll just create the head. Then the structure for it requires a body as well. So we'll say body like this. And now we have to install React Table. So I'll come over here, I'll cd back to client like this, and I'll install yarn add React Table. Perfect. Now we can import here at the top from React Table the use table hook. Oh, it's giving me an error. Could not find. Oh, it's because we also have to install the types for React Table. So I'm going to say yarn add types React Table. So we're going to use the use table hook, then the column type, the cell props type as well, and the row. So first, go right above this and use the use table hook, because it's what's going to define our initial structure of our table. This hook requires two things. First, the columns that we're going to be putting in our app, and we're going to define this in a second, and the data that we're going to be sending. The data obviously is going to be the records that we got from the use financial hook, but the columns is definitely something we have to do. This is going to return back the get table props, the get table body props, the header groups, and the rows. Now, all of them are essential. Oh, I also need a prepare row. Forgot about that. So all of them are essential for us to define the structure of our tables, because after we define this columns thing over here, it will do it entirely for us. All we have to do is come over here and do the following. For our table, we'll pass in all the props that React Table will give us for the table element. So I'll say get table props, and I'll just destructure them like that. I'll also give a class name to this of table for my CSS that I'm going to add later. Then on the T head, I'm going to be saying header groups, because there might be multiple headers, right? Which that will be. And I'm going to say .map. And for each header group, HG, I'm going to be rendering a TR, which will have the header group prop. So I'll say 3 dots, hg.get header groups props. Again, I know this is a bit confusing, but it's just how React Table is. If you want to see my in-depth React Table tutorial, I have a video on this channel. However, I wouldn't worry that much. It's just confusing to make the table, but after you're done with it, it's fine. You know, it's just to get that out of the way. Then inside of here, we'll grab the HG, the header group, we'll grab the headers from it, map through all of them, and grab each individual column like this, and render a TH out of it. And this TH will have the props, like all of them have, which will be destructured from the individual column.get header props. But inside of it, we'll actually render the actual column by saying column.render. And since this is a header, we'll render a header like this. And we'll put this as the indication of what we want to render when we create our columns. Then for our body, it's a little bit less complicated in my opinion, but it's the same idea. So we're gonna get table body props over here and just render them. Then in our T body, we're going to actually loop through all the rows of data we have. So we're gonna loop using a map. We're gonna get a row and an index, just like that. And here, we're gonna first call the prepare row function. This is important because it is necessary by React table to do before you actually return your row. Then we're gonna put a tr over here for our body and destructure the row.get row props. Then inside of tr, we're going to grab the row, grab its cells, and map through those. And inside of here, actually I'll just put a closing curly brace over here so things don't break. And inside of here, it's the last thing we do inside of this is we render a TD for each cell. And this TD will need the cell props. So say 3 dots, get, actually I'll say cell.get cell props. And we'll just tell the cell to render the individual cell that we need to display. Perfect. Whoa, that was a lot, but and hopefully this is working. But this is how we basically build the table in React table. Now, all we have to do to the left is define all the properties from the table by using this columns thing over here. Now, columns is something that we're going to create up here, and it will actually be pretty big. It will be an array, so an array of a column type that we grab from React table, which will be of a financial record type. Now we don't have access to financial record from here, and I believe it's because in our context where we created it, we didn't export it. So we'll just export it over here, save it, go back to financial record list, and just import it. Yeah, import it at the top. Then over here in our columns, parentheses over here, this will actually be a memoized value. So we'll put a use memo just over here. And by the way, if you're using already React 19 in the future, you don't have to use a use memo because we don't use memos anymore. But we'll put over here and it will return an array, and each element in the array will be defined by its header and how its cell will look like. So in a table, for example, we have the description column, right? So inside of this, we have to describe, first of all, what's the header of this description column, which will probably be a string saying description, and then what cells are gonna go inside of here. So to do that, we'll have an object with the first property being a header, and we'll put description for that one. An accessor over here, which will be a way for us to access this this header or this part of the table in the code. So we'll make it like this, description, lowercase. Then we'll have to pass a cell, and a cell will actually be a little bit more complicated because a cell needs to return some UI. How is the UI of this gonna look like? So I'm gonna create an actual component for it. We'll call it editable cell. And the reason why I'm making a separate component for this is because each cell of the table would be a little bit complicated because we want to be able to click on the cell and be able to edit that value. So we'll say editable cell is equal to a React component. So I'll say react.fc functional component, and we'll pass its props as editable cell props. We haven't created them, so create them. So I'll create them right now. The actual props for this. Oh, I need to create it up here. So the actual props for this will be editable cell props, and it will extend the cell props from React table. So we'll say cell props financial record over here. And then we'll have two things that are going to be passed as props to this. One will be a function which will be called to actually update the record. So I'll say update record. And for that one, we'll need the row index, which will be a number, the column ID, which will be a string, and a value for it. So it will be whatever value that record is represented. Since we don't know if we're going to be using this for all of them, right? So it can be an amount, it can be a description, it can be anything. I'm actually just going to put any over here because it can be any of those. And there are multiple different types for them. So I'm putting, it will return void as well. And we'll have a Boolean called editable, which will be, like I said, a Boolean. Now, this will represent if the specific cell is editable or not. The reason for that is because we want to be able to edit, for example, the description of an expense, but not the date in which it was created, because that makes no sense. Like, why would you change the date? So we don't want to do that. Now for the editable cell component, we'll grab all of the props that we just described up here. We'll grab the value and name it initial value. We'll grab the row. We'll grab the column. We'll grab the update record, and we'll grab the editable. If you're asking to yourself, how did I get the row and column? It's because we're extending cell props. So it's something that comes from React table. Remember? Then down here, we want to return a div which will represent our cell. Now this div will have inside of it two different scenarios. One in which the user is editing this cell, and the other one in which the user is not editing the cell. So we'll have this state called editing. So I'll create a state over here. I'll say const is editing and set is editing equal to use state, and it will be false. Then over here, we'll also have another state, which will be the value. So the value of the record after it's changed. And we'll have a set value as well. And the initial value of it will be what we grabbed from the props. So use state initial value. Then inside of here, we'll ask, okay, is the person using this editing the cell right now? Well, if they are, then I want to turn it into an input. It will be self-closing, and this input will have a value equal to the state, so the value state. It will have an onChange, which will be basically a very simple set value equal to e.target.value, just to alter the value of the state. And then, let me make this a little bit bigger because it's becoming a lot of code. Then over here, we also want to pass in an autofocus, because when the user clicks on the state, we want to automatically make them be able to start typing, right? So whenever they click on the cell, they already start typing. Then we probably want to add a style to it. I'll just manually write it over here, which will give a width of it of 100%. So we'll make the input the whole cell. I think I need to make this a string. Perfect. Now, the reason why it's still erroring is because we have to put an else case, and the else case is the value itself, right? So if we have in the cell a description, it will be, the description string will be represented by the value. And if we're not editing it, it will just display it. However, if you recall, we're using this for any type of data, right? We're using this for possibly for a number as well. So what I want to do is I want to change this so that, wait a second. Let me just come over here and put a parentheses like this. And then add another case in which if the type of the value is equal to string, so if one is, it's basically all of them that are strings, then we just want to display the value. It will make a lot more sense when this is done. But if it's not, I want to parse it into a string. So I'll say value to string, and then I also need to make this parentheses over here. Close it, parentheses, and it seems like, oh yeah, we have to put a question mark here. And perfect. It looks really ugly, but it's because my prettier is not working. So I'll just manually edit this like this. So we'll just manually press enter to this, and hopefully you guys understand it by now. It will actually work in a bit. It's just because we're currently having errors in our app, but this is the idea. We'll ask if the user is editing. If they are editing, we render the input. If not, we want to know if the value is a string, because if it's a string, we'll just display the value. If it's not a string, if it's the amount column, then we'll transform it into a string and display it perfectly. Now, we also want to turn this div into an on-click, because we want to be able to start editing whenever we click on it. So I'll say that whenever you click on this and editable is true, because this is a column that can be edited, then we'll set is editing equal to true. Perfect. And then we'll check to see if the user is editing. We also need to close this. Didn't notice. And then what I also want to do is, I want to actually update the data when they're finished editing, but I'll do that in a second because for now I just want to remove this error message from here by putting the cell inside of this return function. So over here we'll grab props from the cell and we'll just return back the editable cell that I just created. So editable cell, perfect. We'll grab the React table props from the cell function, so 3 dots props. And then we'll pass in the update record. Right now, we'll just make a fake function, a simple fake function, and then we'll also pass in the editable equal to true. Okay, so this obviously, as you can see, just got fixed because a prettier is working now. It doesn't work as long as there's errors in your code. And this minor red squiggly lines that we have over here are not actually errors, they're just TypeScript stuff. But before, there were actually errors. But you can see that now we have this cell. Now, the table doesn't look like anything, I believe. I think it's even everything, like I think everything is broken, as you can see, but it's because we're not done with defining our columns. So we just defined the first one, the description one. Now let's describe the rest and then we'll be pretty much done. So description is the first one. The second one is amount. And it should also be editable. The third one is category, which, I should also make this amount and this category. Categories should also be editable. Payment method should also be editable. So payment method. But then we have delete and date, which shouldn't. So we'll say date over here, and this will be false. And then we'll have a delete one as well. So delete. And the delete one is just a cell, a column next to each row that will have just a delete button so we can delete that specific record. So we say delete over here. And this one won't actually return an editable cell. We just want the row, and we want to be able to just return a button that will say delete. And whenever you click on that button, you will call this function to delete the button. We currently don't have the function yet, but we'll have in a second. I also want to put a class name here for button so we have some styling. Now I think it's pretty much done with displaying the data. There's definitely some errors here, and I think they're all TypeScript errors. So we can just maximum update def exceeded. Oh yes, of course. The use memo. I don't think we put the use memo for the columns. I don't think we put a dependency array at the end. So we do have to come over here and put a dependency array so it doesn't completely obliterate our CPU. But as you can see, perfect. Our thing is being displayed and it looks like a table, right? I don't see the delete button here, which is weird. I think it will come with styling maybe, but for now, we'll just keep it like that. It seems like everything is working. And if I click on one of them, it should actually become an input. I find it weird that it's not. Let me see. Let me refresh this. It should become an input. Let's check to see if there's any errors in the code. Oh, I see that accessor. For the delete, we should just put ID instead of accessor. I don't think this will necessarily fix anything here. Oh, I know what the problem is. For each column, this should be with capital C. Such a stupid mistake, but yeah, I mean, I'm leaving the mistakes in because I think that it's important for you guys to see that I also make the mistakes, but I'm able to fix them. Because now, if I click on this, you can see I can change the thing. Now, it's not working fully yet because if I click out, you'll see it doesn't become a cell anymore. It continues like this, right? And this is definitely not what we want. What we want to do is come over here to our editable cell component, and we'll add such that whenever you're on blur, we'll call this function called onBlur. And this function we'll create over here is basically the function that will be called whenever we click out of the input. So we'll come over here. We'll set the is editing to false because the user is not editing anymore. And we'll call the the update record function, which for now doesn't do anything, right? But we'll have to pass in to it, as you can see, the row index, then column ID and the value. So we'll pass in the row.index, the column.id, and the value. Perfect. So now, together with actually, I want to make the cursor a pointer with this. So I'll say that the style of this, whenever the cursor basically will be whenever this thing is editable, I want to make it into a pointer. But if it's not, if it's the date or the delete one, we just want to keep as the default pointer. So let's check that out again. So if I come over here and I hover over this ones, it will have a pointer, but if I go to date or delete, it doesn't. Delete actually has because it's a button, but the other ones doesn't. So if I click on this and I change this and I click out, you'll see that's what is over there. However, we're not passing anything for our delete or update record function. So I don't think, so right now it's not actually doing anything, but that's basically what we're going to do now because most of this is already done. One thing though I want to do before we move on with writing the functions is I want to make this look cool because I think working on this kind of UI is annoying. So I'll copy and paste all my CSS into actually make here a financial record.css file. And I'll probably add some stuff to the app.css as well, because I want to put the styling that I had already done that you saw in the beginning of the video. And if you want, you can just copy all of it. Obviously, the files will be in the description, but I'm not going to show you guys. I'm just going to go over it because it will be a waste of time. So I'll be back in a second when I post the CSS. Okay, everyone, as you can see, everything looks perfect, just like in the beginning of the video. Not perfect because I'm not amazing at CSS, but it looks like the CSS that I edit, right? So all I did is, first of all, I imported the CSS file that we created a couple seconds ago in the video, and inside of my dashboard component, which means it will be accessible on other ones as well. And inside of my financial record.css, I just added some very minor CSS. You can take a look at them. I also put some stuff on the app.css for the app container. And yeah, this is pretty much how it's looking. You'll see if I click on this and I change it, it works, right? So now we want to just add more functionalities. Right now, if I were to come over here and say, I just earned a salary, I don't know, YouTube salary, right? Let's make up an amount here. Let's make an amount of like $1,000, I don't know, as a salary. It's positive because it's income. We'll put here a salary, we put payment, it was a bank transfer. I'm gonna add the record. You see immediately it appears over here. If I refresh the page, still appears here because it's on our database and I can edit it, right? Perfect. However, this editing and the deleting is not actually working. It's not changing in our database. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to go to our context, and this is where we're creating the functions. We're going to uncomment this because now we're actually going to be returning them. And inside of our component here, the provider, I'm going to copy the add record function and make a update record function. Now this one is a bit different. It will require first an ID, which will be a string, and then the new record that we're going to pass. Now inside of here, we're going to make a put request. So we do have to change this to put, and we'll have to change the new record to this. We're going to be sending it through body as well, but we're also going to be sending the ID as params, right? If you look over here to our financial record route, we should see that the put request also requires an ID as well as a body. So we also have to pass here the ID, which would be the username. So, or the user ID. So we'll do the same thing as this. We'll grab this if statement over here. We'll put it right before, and we'll pass in the user dot ID. Now we obviously need to change this to backticks so that we can inject JavaScript inside of a string. And we set it to put, we set it to this, perfect. Okay, it seems like it's actually everything perfect. Now, when we get this back, now, if the response is okay, we're gonna get back the new updated record, right? So we wanna update our state to reflect that. So to update that, we don't do it like we were doing with adding, because then we'll just be adding the new one to the end of the list. We actually want to set the records array equal to its current value, so prev records, dot map. We're going to map through each of the items in the records array. We're going to grab the record which has the record ID. So we'll say if record dot ID is equal to the ID of the record we just changed, which we will grab from the argument of the function, then we want to return the value of this record as the same as it was before. Then we want to return the new record instead. It will be basically the same thing, but with the changes. And differently, if it's not, we just want to return the current value, so record. So if you're looking at this, it might look a bit confusing, but it's pretty easy to understand. We're changing the records array, and we're mapping through the current records array and basically checking, okay, through every element, is this the record that I just updated? If it is, because the IDs match, then make this entry reflect the new record that we just changed. If not, just keep the old version of it. So now if we come over here, we'll update this. Actually, we haven't passed this edit record. So I'll put update record over here. Actually, I'll comment the delete one because we'll do that in a bit. But with the update one, now I can come to financial record list. I can import the update record from here, and we can actually pass it as the correct function, right? We were passing as the update record, we were passing the like a empty function, but now we can just pass update record and it should work. It's given us a type error, but I'll check it in a second. It's probably something minor. Let's pass this, and let's pass this. Perfect. Let's check what the problem is. Yeah, it seems like actually we need to create a separate function that handles the row IDs, right? So we'll call update cell record, and we'll make it into a function similar to how we defined it over here, right? It has the row index, the column ID, and the value. So I forgot why I did that. I'm sorry, but it's because this is the only way to make it work. We'll define the index over here as a number, the column ID as a string, and the value as any again. And inside of here, we're going to do two things. We're going to first grab the ID, const ID. Oh, I forgot to make the function const ID is equal to records. We're going to access the record inside of with the row index. We're going to grab the ID of that specific record. And then we're going to say update record inside of here. And we're going to pass in the ID we just grabbed. If it's false, because there is a possibility, we'll put an empty string. And the new record that we want to send is an object with the column ID and the value equal to whatever we put over here. Now, this is just one part of this object because it's only the thing we're editing. For example, if this column that we're editing is the description column, the column ID will be for the one of the description, and the value will be whatever we're trying to edit, like whatever change we made to the description of our record. However, we want to return here the whole record. So we do have to destructure here the records row index, and then pass in the column ID like this. So we will keep everything the same, but change the specific column and its value that we are making the edit. Then we're going to pass this instead of update record. And yeah, the error is going away. Actually, before we test this, I realized I made a mistake. We shouldn't be passing the user ID here. We should be passing the ID of the record that we want to update, right? That's why we even got the ID over here. So let's save this and try this out. I'm going to refresh this. I'm going to inspect element. Let's just see if, or actually I'll go to network tab and let's see if anything happens. I'm going to try to alter this and make this 2000. And, no network request was made. If I refresh, nothing was created. Interesting. Let's try to see what happened here. Financial records. Oh, one thing that we need to realize, and I just noticed this, is that the format of the ID that comes back from MongoDB actually has an underscore. I don't think necessarily this is a problem, but this will be a problem. So we definitely need to fix that. We have to come up here at the top, and on the definition of our financial record, we have to put an underscore. And now wherever we access this, we also have to put an underscore. So I'm gonna put an underscore everywhere. Yeah, here as well. Oh, actually, this is the user ID. Yeah, I think it was just on those places. I also just noticed something. I think maybe the reason, let's actually try again. I actually think the reason, let's just try again. Let's try to update this and see what happens. Network, update this. It must make the request, correct? It's not even making the request. And I think the reason why it's not making a request is because it's saying that if the user, it's asking if not the user. This isn't actually necessary anymore because we're not using the user ID. So technically, we can remove that and try again. And yeah, it made a request, but it failed. Let's see why. It made a request, but it didn't get the ID. And I think I understand why it didn't get the ID. On our use memo over here, which is when we define our columns, right? Each of our cells, we're passing in the update cell record. This update cell record includes a bunch of stuff, including the actual value of the record's state, correct? However, this is only generating once, right? Because we're using a use memo and we're having here an empty dependency array. So the first run of rendering this component will render this columns array with an empty records because that's how it is initially, right? Before we fetch the data, this is how it is. It's an empty array. So what we do have to do is we need to come over here at the bottom and we have to make it such that whenever there's a change in the records, it will recreate this whole columns array. And I believe now If I come over here, refresh this, and I change this to 2000, let's see the network request. And I change this value to 2000. Yes, it was a successful request. We can actually check it over here. It was the salary. Let's refresh this, and hopefully it will be 2000 there. Yes, and here it is, amount 2000. And we can actually check that as well by just refreshing this, and the amount will stick there. We can change other stuff as well. I could change this from bank transfer to cash, and hopefully that will work as well. Yes, it does. So our editing functionality is pretty much completed. The only thing we have left for the Crud aspect of this project is deleting this. I also want to add a total like overall amount of income plus expenses and display it here at the bottom, but that should be pretty simple. The deleting functionality is also pretty simple because we already have the function. The only thing we need to do is make the request for our endpoint, right? So in our financial record context over here, we go down at the bottom and we'll create the delete record. So const delete record. Obviously it includes an ID, which will be a string. And this one is actually very similar to I believe the add record. So I'll even copy all of this over here and just paste it on the delete. The only difference is that we have financial records over here. Obviously this will have to pass in ID. So we'll put backticks and we'll put over here the ID. Then you also have to make this async, and the method will be delete. Now we're not going to pass the body and no headers for this one. I believe, yeah, I think this should be pretty much fine. And on the response, we'll have the new deleted record, right? So we're going to grab that deleted record over here. And what we want to do is we want to set the records array to be equal to the same as what it was before, minus that record that we just deleted. So the way we can do this is we'll say set records equal to prev, which is the current array, dot filter, and then we'll filter through all the records and we'll only keep the ones which the record.id is not equal to the ID that we just deleted. And actually, we'll just put the record.id over here because I think that will actually be more accurate. And yeah, pretty much I think that should be it. Let's come over here and uncomment the delete record function and pass it down at the bottom. Now we have to go to our financial record list, and on this delete cell, we now have to call that function. So I'm going to call the delete record. Well, I'm not actually pulling that function from the use financial records hook. So I'll pull the function and we'll say delete records. And we need to pass an ID, correct? How do we get that ID? Well, if we go and access this row, we can actually get the specific ID. And it's not the ID of the row. That's confusion because the ID of the row, as you can see over here, is part of props related to a React table. But if we want to get the original ID, so we'll come here to original, and then we can access everything related to the specific data that is being rendered in this cell. So we want to get the ID from the original. And it obviously can be null, so we'll put an option to cast an empty string in case it is null. So we satisfied TypeScript, and I think this should be working. Let's actually come over here and let's try deleting our salary. It deleted, but I'm not sure if it actually deleted it. So we can only make sure by refreshing this, and yeah, it did. Perfect. And we can even check over here. It should have deleted it as well. Yeah, perfect. What I want to do is I want to add a couple more over here just for us to test. I'll be back in a second when I add more because I want to have a couple extra things so we can actually test this in a bigger scale. Okay, everyone. So I just added a bunch of stuff. As you can see, it's fake data. Like I'm trying to replicate how a monthly budget should be. But yeah, this is basically the stuff that I added. And now what I want to do is I want to have over here some sort of total, right? And I want to put it right at the bottom. Obviously, there's better places maybe to put, since this will consistently, actually, I'll put at the top here. I'll put above the table. So what I want to do is I'll come over here to our dashboard, and you might notice that we're displaying the two components over here, the record form and the financial record list, one on top of the other. So right over here, I can just put a div, and whatever I write over here will exist in between them, as you can see. So what I want to put is actually the full amount. So we're going to write here total monthly, just total monthly. So like all the expenses, all the income minus all the expenses of your month. So how do we do that? Well, it's actually really simple. We grab the records from the use financial records hook straight up, and with this records, we can actually make a calculation. I can come over here and I say const total monthly equal to, we'll go to the records and we want to loop through all of them. So actually with this might be a good place to use a use memo. So over here, we'll loop through all of them and we'll return some sort of value. And this use memo will change depending on the records array. That's the only time this value will be re-rendered. So over here, what we can do is we can grab total, we'll create a variable called total amount equal to 0. Then we'll loop through the records by basically saying records dot for each, and we'll grab each specific record. And inside of here, we'll just add the total amount plus or equal to the record dot amount. And then at the end, we'll just return the record, the total amount actually. Return total amount. And then at the end, this total monthly variable will be equal to the sum of all of them. And we'll just put it over here, total monthly equal to the total monthly amount. And we can see that over here, it should demonstrate that money. As you can see, we can even put a money sign over here. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm positive, right? So if I remove one of my big positives, like my salary, it should update to become negative, right? So it decreased, I think it decreased 2,000, right? So if I decrease this phone purchase, it should increase. Yeah, perfect. So everything seems to be working perfectly fine. One thing we want to do as the last thing is maybe adding some sort of like navbar at the top. And to do that is actually pretty simple. I'm going to come to our app.tsx over here, and I'm just going to add a navbar. And we can do that by probably creating a navbar component. But I don't want to create an extra one right now. I'll just make one like this. Call it navbar. And over here, we'll just have two different links. We can use links from React Router DOM, which is pretty good. There are components that we can just import. So we'll say link, and we'll just put them. We want two of them. We want a link for the dashboard. And we want another link, which will actually be the profile picture. It shouldn't actually be a link, this one actually. I think it should be probably the actual button. So we'll go to our auth component and we'll grab this thing over here that we put in the auth page, and we'll actually put it over here. Such that if the user is signed in, it will show their little profile picture at the top, as you can see, and you can click on it and log out. Everything is handled by Clerk, which is amazing, right? To do this manually would be really annoying. Now for the link, we'll just put a 2 as where you want to go if you click on that link, and will be the main page, so that if in case you're in the auth page right here, which currently doesn't have anything, just as a dashboard, we can click on dashboard and go over here. One thing we can do on the auth page though, so that we never get into that state, is that if we are signed in, over here, we'll use that component again. We can actually use one of one of React.DOM's component. So we'll say import from React.DOM. We'll use the navigate component. So we'll say navigate, and we'll force the thing to navigate towards the main page. So we'll say navigate to the main page, so that if you ever find yourself in the state where you're logged in, but you're in the auth page, you won't find yourself in that state because it will automatically redirect you to the main page. Okay, everyone, I also added some CSS to our app.css, as you can see, but the idea is pretty much the same. If we go to our dashboard component, actually to our app.tsx, maintain everything the same. The difference is that I added the CSS and now it kind of looks pretty nice, right? And it looks pretty nice, right? So one thing we can do as well, if we are interested, is there's some stuff we can do with the user button. For example, Clerk provides us this show name prop, which if we pass, it will show our name. I personally don't want that with this, but if you want to, that's definitely a thing you can do. Also, we could add a library over here called @clerk/themes. I believe this is the library. Yeah. And with this one, if we import over here at the top, import from @clerk themes, we can import a couple cool themes. Like we could import the dark theme and then come over here and give the appearance, change the base theme to dark. Right? They provide us with a lot of possibilities with what we want to do, right? I actually don't notice any, oh, maybe when you click on it, yeah, it changed completely the theme of what's showing here. I think the other one made more sense for our project, but I'm just showing you guys some things you can do with the components built by Clerk. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. This video took a very long time to make, and I'm trying my best to make videos where I don't spend too much time working on the project, but at the same time, I am able to go very in depth with what I want to explain. And I think with this video, I definitely put across my point. If you guys want to check out Clerk, thanks again for them for sponsoring this video. It definitely helps the channel, and their service is free. Obviously, there's paid versions of their service, but there's no reason not to check it out. You saw how easy it was to make this video using them, because if I were to manage my authentication on myself, it would have taken a lot longer. And keep in mind, I haven't done everything I should have done. Like, I could have, for example, they give us back a JWT. For this project, if I were to improve this, I'll probably validate my requests using their JWT. So all of that was already handled by Clerk, and I just didn't do it because authentication wasn't supposed to be the main purpose of this project. They just made it very simple for us to add it, even if we didn't want to spend a lot of time making it. So that's one of the reasons why I even took this sponsorship, because I really like their service. So that's basically it. Really hope you guys enjoyed it. Check out the code in the description, and I see you guys next time.